Hi, I'm Desi Serna, author of Fretboard Theory, Guitar Theory for Dummies, and Guitar Rhythm and Technique for Dummies. In this free guitar lesson, I'm going to show you how to play a couple parts from the song Caught Up in You by 38 Special. This song has some chord shapes that are great examples of using different fingerings and inversions that are derived from the guitar cage system. This lesson is suitable for intermediate level players on up who are already familiar with standard bar chords and rhythm guitar technique. You can follow along with free guitar tab. Just go to the link in the video description. To get my sound for this song, I'm playing a Paul Reed Smith DGT guitar. I'm using the bridge humbucker. I'm plugged into a Fender Pro Junior. I've got it set to about 4 and I'm using the natural overdrive from the amp. But I'm not using the speaker. Instead, I have it the amp plugged into this Rivera Silent Sister isolation cabinet, and it's got a 12-inch Celestion Vintage 30 speaker in it. And then I'm using some reverb on my mixer, and my guitar sounds like this. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to show you just a couple of sections in the song, and we're going to talk about the chord shapes and where they come from. So make sure you have the tab in front of you. I've got the tab in front of me here, and I'm going to be referring to it. I'm going to start by just playing the first part of the verse. I'm going to play it along with the metronome, and then when I'm done, I will walk you through it chord by chord. All right, so that was just the first 8 bars. What I have labeled the verse. We'll take a look at verse continued here in a minute. So let's get started. You're in the key of E, so you can think E major scale. And you're playing mainly power chords here, but then you have some shapes that are actually a root and third major chord inversion. So let's follow along with the tab. So you start up here on an E power chord, which you can finger with your first and third or your first and fourth, however you want to do it. So you've got E, and then from here you're going to drop just the root E down to D sharp, but you're going to keep B up here. And I want to stop right here and talk about this particular chord shape. Actually, let me back up. This E is a standard power chord shape, and it's actually just part of a larger A-form bar chord, which is a standard bar chord shape. But for this next chord shape, this is actually a B/D sharp, and it is surprisingly drawn from an E-form bar chord. Now you may not see it that way, so let me explain where it comes from. So here's B in a standard bar chord shape. This is E form, and B is made up of the notes B, D sharp, and F sharp here. And you could play this as an arpeggio, where you play through the notes of the chord in order like a scale, like this. So there are all the notes related to B in this position. I actually reached up here for that D sharp. So you may have noticed that there is a D sharp back here that is related to the B chord. You normally don't play it when you do a standard bar chord. This is the standard shape. But that B is there, and it's fair game, and you could use it. So think about, you might do something like, or maybe, and you could actually skip the root B here and just play its third and then play the root B up here in the next octave. That's still part of a B chord. You don't have the fifth in there, but you do have the root and the major third, and that's enough to kind of establish that major chord tonality. And this is where that shape comes from this song. It's an inversion, which means that you have something other than the root in the bass or lowest position. You've got the major third here. So this is called B slash D sharp, and this is actually related to an E form bar chord. And if you've learned the cage system that I teach in my guitar theory instruction, then you understand what I'm talking about here. And by the way, I'm not going to get into all the details of caged. I cover that at length in my video courses. I'm kind of assuming that you already know that, and this lesson is really just to show you how you can apply what you've learned from the cage system to some familiar songs. All right, so back to the tab. You've got an E5, a B slash D sharp, and then from here you go down to C sharp, and this is just a power chord, B, A. These are all just standard power chord shapes along the 5th string. Come back up to C sharp, B, whoops. What's tricky though is that this is syncopated. You have chord changes on some kind of unpredictable parts of the beat. They fall in between the beats actually. So let me play through this again and pay attention to when the chord change is on the beat or when it's opposite the beat. Actually, all of them are on the upbeat, I think, except for that C sharp second time around. Well, you start on the downbeat, and then it's upbeat, upbeat, up, down, up. So that might be a little awkward for you. You know, it's really easy when things land right on the beat and you change on the beat, so that might throw you off. So just slow it down. And play it. In my brain, I always think of it as each chord change. I imagine that each chord change is on the beat. But then in my brain, I imagine that I'm going to go to each note a half beat early. That's how I think of it. That C sharp in measure 2 there is the only one, aside from the very first E, the only one that actually lands right on the beat. Another thing I should point out, because it might be new for you, is that I am palm muting, and you see in the tab PM, that stands for palm mute, and you see a little line that means that you do it throughout. So I'm just laying my palm on the strings here from the bridge so that instead of letting the notes ring out like this, I get this sound. So this is a good example of using palm muting. All right, picking up in measure 4, the next 4 measures are basically a repeat of the first 4. You play through the same changes again. You just end a little bit differently because you lead into the next section, which I call verse continued. So let me play through measures 4 through 8, and I'll show you the part that's different there at the end. So. So at the very end there you play, just kind of walking up part of the E major scale leading into an A power chord. And that happens on the and of beat 3. So if I start right at the beginning of measure 7, you've got 1, 2, 3, and. Let me do that again. 1, 2, 3. So you might want to work out making sure you time that. You begin that at the right time. Okay, so you left off then with A, and then that's going to lead you into what I call verse continued. Let me play through this particular section of the song with the metronome up to tempo, and then I'll break it down for you. All right, so now we're taking a look at measure 8, and let me just play that for you slowly. So you've got, And remember that you played an A on the end of beat 4 in the measure before, in measure 7. So it might be a good idea to think of this part as beginning there. So I'm going to back up and I'm going to play that, I'll call it like a pickup note in measure 7 and lead into measure 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You have more of this syncopation where you're starting chord changes, you know, a half beat early. In fact, let me play all of measure 7. So 1, 2, 3, 8. We do that again, measure 7 through measure 8. So and I kept going there, so you just keep strumming that B through measure 9, and then on the end of beat 3, you have another little kind of a scale run that leads back up to E here. This one's a little bit different. You actually play the open E and then the 2nd fret and the 4th fret. So, and that leads right back into A. So how about from the pickup note into measure 8 through measure 9, and I'll play half of measure 10. So 2, 3, 4. Got it? Work that out. You know, play it over and over, memorize it, rehearse it, and then you can move on when you're ready. We're in measure 10. We just finished up with the A. You got that C sharp. Here's an example where you actually play the chord on the downbeat for a change. Isn't that nice? Doesn't last long because that B comes in on the end of 4 again. And then you have almost a full measure of B there. As I listened to the recording, it sounded like they put in a quick A right at the end as they moved, and I'm not sure that note's really all that critical, so you could probably skip it. So pick up to measure 8. Here we go. 2, 3, 4. In fact, I just played an open A at the end of measure 11. And then that brings you into measure 12, which sounds like this. Well, I played those whole 4 bars. So measure 12 sounds like this. So you've got an F sharp power chord coming out of like a F sharp minor. Think about your E scale, you know. So this is like an F sharp minor. You're just playing a power chord here. Then here's a unique chord shape. This is one of the reasons why I chose to do a lesson on this song. You've got an E/G sharp like this. So let's just stop for a minute and take a look at this chord. So here's E in E form, obviously. And you could actually play the octave E here like this. You could play E in D form like this. Not easy to do, but the notes are there. If you think about, you know, if you had a capo here, you could play a D/F sharp, and you could do something like, and so think about the arpeggio that goes along with this shape. So these are all notes related to E, notes that are not used as commonly as other standard chord shapes, but you could play G sharp, that's from an E chord. You can play E, that's from an E chord. You can play B. So you've got basically the root, 5th, and then you've got the 3rd in the bass. This is an inversion. You call that E/G sharp. One thing that's kind of tricky about this is that as you strum it, you need to mute some strings. You want to hear the 6th string. You do not want to hear the 5th string. You want to hear the 4th and the 3rd, and that's it. So it takes a little extra finesse to place your fingers in a manner where you can fret the notes that you want, but then you can butt up against and mute or lay over the strings that you want to keep quiet. So watch how I do this. As I fret the G sharp there, I lean my third finger back so I bump into the fifth string so it doesn't ring. As I fret the E here on the fourth string, I place my finger in a manner where the tip of it is also going to butt up against that first string, just giving me some extra insurance that the fifth string isn't going to ring. And then here's my pinky on the fourth string. And if I were to get a little bit of the second or third string in there, it wouldn't matter in this case because they're both related to E. But I do actually roll my hand back a little bit so that these fingers bump into those strings, because I mainly just want to hear these three notes. This is actually fairly common guitar technique. We're kind of getting away from basic standard chord shapes. This is a different chord shape. There's more muting involved. Like I said earlier, it takes a little bit more finesse. But these are techniques that if you aspire to be a great rhythm guitar player, that you want to get down. So, new shape here, pulled from the D form in the cage system. So let's back up to the measure, back up to measure 12. So you've got F sharp power chord, then here's that E/G sharp, then you've got an A power chord, and look at the rhythm here. So back to 12, you know, 1 and for the F sharp, you know, and then that E/G sharp comes in on the upbeat, and then on the downbeat, and then the A comes in on the upbeat, and then the downbeat in the next measure. So it's, I'm sorry, I told you that wrong. Yep, we have some ties here, I missed. Okay, so it's the F sharp is on 1 and then the E/G sharp is on both the upbeats. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 4, or 4 and 1 and. So once you get past the F sharp, it's all upbeats from there. And that carries over into the next chord, F sharp/A sharp. You're going to play F sharp at the 4th fret of the 4th string, and you're going to play A sharp at the 1st fret of the 5th string. This is actually the same shape that you used up here in, for the first chord changes you learned. And you know that this actually was pulled from a B. So move this down here. This is actually pulled from an F sharp right there. Now normally in the E major scale, F sharp, the 2 chord, is minor. But in this case, it's major. You've got a major third, and it's functioning as a secondary dominant that's pushing to the 5 chord B. I'm not going to get into all those details, but in Fretboard Theory Volume 2, I talk about dominant chords and secondary dominant chords. So you can learn more about that there. And so this is kind of creating like a little chromatic. The third of F sharp here is creating a little chromatic half-step movement that's leading in to the B. So from the beginning of measure 12, and that eventually leads to B. So think about the bass notes for each chord shape there and what's happening. Got a little chromatic half-step movement there. And then once you end on B, you play almost 2 full measures of B. You head into the chorus after that, which begins on A, and as is done so much throughout this song, you come into that A a half beat early. All right, let me play measures 12, 13, 14, and 15. So it's... Notice that I mainly let those chords ring out. I wasn't actually palm muting for most of those measures. You can kind of palm mute to taste, but at the beginning of those measures, you definitely want to let those ring out. Notice that I was kind of using my palm of my right hand to keep the strings quiet in between those chord changes, so you can just to clean it up there. Okay, let me play what I call the verse continued. This is going to be measure 8 through measure 15, and I'm gonna put the pickup note in it. In fact, I'm going to play all of measure 7 while I'm at it. So I'll start at measure 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops, let me do that again. All right, now we're heading into the chorus. Let me play it with the pickup note. And you know what? Let me play it with the metronome is what I meant to say. And I'm going to actually add a pickup note. So when I come in, I'm going to come in on the end of 4 and play that A5 at the end of measure 15. And then I'll play through the whole chorus. All right, so we're picking up now measure 16. So no new chord shapes here. You've already played through the chord shapes, and I've already explained where they come from, but we just have a slightly different chord progression, so they're just going to be in a slightly different order. So I'm going to play the pickup note at the end of 15, which is an A, and then you come into measure 16, so you've got A, there's the E/G sharp, and notice how many chord changes come in on the ands again. There's F sharp power chord. Let me do that again. C sharp power chord on the and. Let's see. That E5 actually should come in on the beat. So let me back up. Measure 16 with pickup note. Yeah, that should be on the beat. I'm in measure 20 now, and it goes through those same changes again. On the beat there, and then on the and, as you go back to A, I'm in measure 24 now. And then here's where things are a little bit different. So the and of 4 in measure 25 leading into 26 is so you're doing that climb again with that chromatic half step, right? Your rhythm is a little bit different. So again, starting on the and of 4 in measure 25, it's whoops. So just think. It's a little tricky getting from that F sharp into that that E/G sharp. you just finish off with the B power chord there. Well, that concludes the parts that I wanted to cover to the song. There's certainly more to the song, and if you follow the link in the video description here to view the guitar tab on my website, I also have some links where you can actually purchase the complete and official guitar tab if you wanted to see how the original recording was played, or you wanted to learn any other parts from the song. At any rate, I chose this song because I really liked some of those unique inversions that it uses, and it's a great example of just a few of the chord shapes that are possible with the cage system that I teach. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this free guitar lesson. If you would like to learn more about music theory for guitar, then go to my website at guitar-music-theory.com. That's guitar music theory with dashes in between the words. When you get there, you can sign up to join my email list, you can receive some free materials, and you can preview the full theory courses that I offer. Well, thanks for watching. Please click like on this video and leave me some positive comments.